And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Okay, looking at today's weather again, not much of anything out here over the Bering Sea. A couple of weak lows out there, not really creating much in the way of any wind or rain. A little breezy up here yet along the western Arctic coast down into maybe the northwest coast there. Keeping it mostly sunny up there today, but a lot of smoke there on down across the Seward Peninsula. Showers, clouds, central southern Alaska, and diminishing showers on the southeast coast. Higher pressure back in here begins to build in, but for tomorrow, already got moisture overrunning into the ridge with this next system here as it pulls northward there. You won't see the winds we saw with the last one with this feature here, and this should continue to track off to the northeast for Monday night and Tuesday. Otherwise, no storminess out west at all, really. Nothing much going on out there through the Bering Sea. Light winds over the interior as well. Then we'll see for a Tuesday, that low really weakens, tracks up into the Gulf of Alaska, keeps it cloudy and unsettled over much of southern Alaska, and some showers up along the Brooks Range. Showers holding here with this trough rotating up to the north coast and over the northern panhandle, but drying out down to the south as another ridge of high pressure kind of builds back up again. Next system off here to the southwest will be taking off to the northeast in that southwest jet. And for the coastal water forecast for Monday, next system approaching in the afternoon, so winds southeast coming up to 25 to 30 knots on the south coast, increasing to 30 knots from the southeast on the north coast, east-southeast 25, on the central coast, southeast 30 knots, north coast, east-southeast 25 knots, Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, southeast winds of 15 knots, southeast at 20 for Clarence, southeast 20 for Stevens Passage, and Clarence Strait, southeast winds 25 knots. For Tuesday, Clarence Strait south at 10, Stevens Passage south at 20, small craft advisories for Lynn Canal, south winds 25 knots. Lighter, more southwest winds here on the south coast at 15, central coast south at 20, north coast anywhere from southeast to northeast at 20 knots with seas 7 to 8 feet. Cook Inlet tomorrow, light variable winds at 10 knots, seas at 2 to 3 feet. And the Kamishak Bay area looking at east winds at 15 knots, east at 20 for the Barren Islands. Prince William Sound, light southeast wind, 15 knots, seas maybe 3 feet. And east-northeast winds at 20 knots with 6 to 7 foot seas for the North Gulf Coast. And for Tuesday, light variable winds for Kamishak Bay, the Barren Islands, North Gulf Coast, and Prince William Sound, no more than 10 knots in those areas. And south to southeast breeze at 10 knots. South to southwest breeze at 10 knots for Cook Inlet. Kodiak Island, northeast winds 15 to 25 knots tomorrow. Light variable winds for the Alaska Peninsula, east at 10 for Bristol Bay. That'll become west at 10 on Tuesday. Otherwise, west winds 10 to 15 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. Light variable winds here for Kodiak Island. Really laying down pretty good there, 10 knots or less with seas coming down to 2 to 6 feet. And for the eastern Aleutians, variable to south winds 15 knots. Central Aleutians, variable winds at 10 knots with 2 to 3 foot seas there for Adak and Atka. West-northwesterlies of 15 knots for the western Aleutians. And for Tuesday, 10 to 20 knot winds from the west-southwest here west of Adak to Shemya. And for Adak and Atka, southwest winds 15 knots. On Alaska Island, west winds 15 knots with 3 to 6 foot seas. For the southwest coast, south winds tomorrow at 15 knots there with 2 to 3 foot seas. Not too bad. Light variable winds for the Pribilofs at 10 knots, seas 3 feet. South 20 with 4 foot seas, St. Matthew Island. St. Lawrence Island south at 20. Norton Sound south at 15. And for the day Tuesday, St. Matthew Island, southwest wind, 15 knots. Another light variable wind day for the Pribilofs with seas at 3 feet. Northwest 10 for the Kuskokwim Delta Coast, Yukon Delta Coast, southwest at 10. And St. Lawrence Island, south winds 15 knots. Central and eastern Arctic coast tomorrow, east winds 15 knots, seas 3 feet. East winds 20 knots for the western Arctic coast. Chukchi Sea, light south to southwest breeze at 10 to 15 knots. And for Tuesday, 10 knot winds here for the Chukchi Sea at about 10 knot winds from the south and southeast, southwest, southwest 15, western Arctic coast, southeast 15 on the central coast, and east at about 15 knots with 3 foot seas for the east side.